Hello students. Today we are going to discuss the first chapter of Cbse prose, that is the last lesson, written by Alfonso Daudet. So before going to the lesson, let us discuss something about the writing. So, Alfonso Daudet, who was born in the year May 13th, 1840 and died on December 16th, 1897, was a French short story writer and novelist. So, Daudet now threw himself into writing and began to frequently write in literary circles, both bohemian and fashionable. So, what is bohemian, students? So, it is something which is socially unconventional and the person especially who is involved in arts. Clear? And he also contributed his articles to the newspapers, in particularly to Figaro. So Figaro basically is a French daily newspaper which was founded in the year 1826 and it was published in Paris. It is the most oldest national daily in France. Okay. And in the Franco-German War, which had a profound effect on his writing, as can be judged from his second volume of short stories, Les Countess du Lundi in 1873 and Monday Tales. Okay, so what is Franco-German War? So it is also called as Franco-Prussian War, which was held from July 19th, 1870 to May 10th, 1871. Okay, which resulted in the coalition of German states led by Prussia, which defeated also France and resulted in the creation of the unified Germany. So at that point of time, Alfonso involved himself in the war and lost, or he was held mentally and physically ill, and because of his failing health he was forced not to join war back but to stay back and write for the rest of his life. Okay, so now, what is this last lesson all about? So this last lesson plot is set in the days of the Franco-Prussian War, that is 1870-71, okay, led by Bismarck, and Prussian defeated France, okay, and the French districts of Alsace and Lorraine passed into Prussian hands, okay. The two protagonists of the story, let us discuss about the characters, and the main characters are France. Okay, so Franz and M. Hamel belong to Alsace, and here M. Hamel is a French language teacher at a school and Franz is one of his students. Okay, so the story revolves around them only and how it proves to be a life altering event for both of them. Okay, so Franz is a dawdler when it comes to schoolwork, okay, preferring to spend time in the woods or by local river is very much appreciated by him rather than going to class. He does not like learning his French grammar lessons, and when the story begins, he is terrified that because of his negligence, the teacher, that is M. Hamel, will find out the mistake of Franz and he will be giving him punishment. Okay. And on the other hand, M. Hamel, he is a French teacher who is very much passionate about French language, and according to him, French is most beautiful and clear local language. Okay, and he has given his 40 years of faithful service in the school of Alsace and Lorraine. Okay, so he is very much passionate about the language and he expects everyone to study perfectly all the grammar lesson which he is teaching in school. And Franz, on the other hand, who was a student, and he was less bothered about that. Clear? So now you got the plot idea and what are the characters about. Now let us go to the story. So I started for school very late that morning and was in great dread of scolding, especially because M. Hamel had said that he would question us on participles and I did not know the first word about them. For a moment I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. It was so warm, so bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and in the open field back of the sawmill the Prussian soldiers were drilling. It was all much more tempting than the rule for participles, but I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. So from the beginning we are getting the idea that Franz was least bothered about the classes in the school, and he liked to spend time with nature and to see the soldiers marching on the road rather than taking the participle lessons from M. Hamel. But he was so afraid that he could not miss the class because he was terrified that M. Hamel would surely give him punishment, and he was very strict in the idea of France. So he is very much clear from the beginning only that he does not understand a single word of French. And the reason is he never paid attention to it because he was more tempted or more attracted towards the other things which gave him much more peace and solace as compared to the rules of participles which M. Hamel taught him. But then also he gathered the strength so that he could avoid this good views which appreciated were very much appreciated by him, and he found the time so that he could run away as soon as possible to reach to Mr. Hamel's class. Okay. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. For the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officer, and I thought to myself without stopping that what worse could be more than seeing all the bad news which always gets posted on the bulletin board. Okay, so that question came to France that every time we see the bulletin board, something bad always happens. So, what would be new this time? It would be the same, the frustrating or irritating news regarding the war-like situation and how they are controlled by the other country. Okay, so then as I hurried by as fast as I could, the blacksmith, what he did, the blacksmith watcher who was there with his apprentice, he said, reading the bulletin, don't go so fast, Bub. You'll get to your school in plenty of time. So, here what happened? So, when he was very much hurrying to the school, on his way, he saw many people were standing near the bulletin board and some notice has been put upon. So when he saw the crowd, he was least bothered about it. Why? Because he knows that something devastating would be there, and a very much normal thing was for him to see everything or every time something bad popping up on that bulletin board. So when the blacksmith called him, he was unwilling to listen to him, and he was carried towards the school as soon as possible. Okay, because every time he read about the lost battles, draughts, and the orders of the commanding officer. Okay, so every time he sees something bad was there, so now also he was very much sure that something bad might have been posted on the bulletin board. Clear? And when the school began, there was a great bustle which could be heard out in the street. The opening and closing of the desk, lessons, and repeated in unison, very loud with our hands over our ears to understand better, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. But now it was all so still. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. But of course, the day everything had to be so quiet as Sunday morning. Through the window I saw my classmates already in their places, and M. Hamel walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how I blushed and how frightened I was. But nothing happened. M. Hamel saw me and said very kindly, go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you. So this was a very unusual sight for France that day, because a daily basis school was expected in the morning to be very much crowded, and everybody should be gossiping, chit chatting around in the assembly ground, and the sounds will be very much disturbing, and whenever some classes are going on, everyone will be reciting the things which teacher says. Everything will be going in a together voice, in unison, everything. Okay, but now today when France reached the school, everything was very much different. It was Franz bangs heavily on the usual commotion of the class and plans to quietly slip into his bench without attracting the attention of M. Hamel, because he was terrified that as he was late, Mr. Hamel would punish him. But he finds that the garden outside the school is as silent as on Sunday morning. Okay, and when he peers through the window and sees his classmates in their respective seats, frightened and ashamed what he should do, he opens the door and enters the class. And surprisingly, M. Hamel is rather kind towards him, which generally he does not does not happen with him. Okay, in a daily life, and he does not reproach him for being late. And Franz, in the meanwhile, goes to his desk and notices that the teacher has no reaction to his gesture, and he is very kind and he is inviting him to sit so that he could start a class. So, what happened? Why this thing was unusual? Let us discuss in the next class. Thank you for listening, and this is the end of part 1.